Alright guys, welcome to another video on Jujutsu Kaisen, and today I'll be doing a guide on how to play Mahito. Now Mahito is definitely a very strong character, one of the top characters because of his own domain expansion, which I'll go through in a bit. So it's very important for you guys to actually understand how to actually play him correctly, especially considering the fact that he is available in the Phantom Medal shop, so everyone can actually have access to get him with like no RNG, no involvement of gacha or anything like that. So this is a character everyone's bound to have. So if you can actually maximize what he's capable of doing, it will take you very, very far in this game. Okay, now when we actually go through this character, the first thing you will notice is that if you actually take a look at his description, you're gonna see it's labeled as green because that's his color, and also labeled as attacker. I'm gonna ask you guys to forget about both of those things because yes, that is basically how Mahito may be labeled as, but the reality when you actually play him is going to be very, very different. And that is once again all down to his domain expansion. If you actually take a look at his domain expansion, it's always able to unleash his domain, which is nice by itself. But the most important thing about here is that it's actually going to also do an attack, which is proportional to enemy's maximum HP. And that is actually very, very interesting because basically what this means is that you're able to do this damage regardless of any enemy's color. So even if the enemy has like strong resistance against green type of attack, which is what Mahito color is, it doesn't matter. You're gonna do that fixed proportion of HP damage, which it doesn't say here, but it's 15%. Okay, and then second thing is that this is not going to be affected by anything else. The 15% proportion scaling on HP is always going to be the same, regardless what buffs there are, what debuffs there are, whether you have your Mahito duped up, well, whether you have even leveled up your ult from level 1 to level 10, none of them is going to make any difference at all to this 15% HP scaling. And if that's the case, a lot of time you will kind of be wondering, it's like, why would I even need to play buffers alongside with Mahito? If he is always going to be, doing a minimum amount of damage based on this, there's obviously not much point of doing anything additional to help him. So why don't you, rather than try to increase his offensive capability, which is kind of fixed vast majority of the time, you actually focus on his defensive capability. And that's kind of why a lot of time you will actually be playing Mahito in a stalling team where you maximize the amount of defensive capability so that you can actually slowly wear down the enemy. And that's kind of why, forget about what you see about Mahito here. Yes, he's green, but actually he can be used against any color. And yes, he's an attacker, but you are playing him in a very, very defensive oriented team. Okay. Now the other thing I will also want to point out is that even though this damage output is always going to be fixed, so regardless what your level is of your ultimate attack, it's always going to be 15%. It is still important for you to level it up, and I do recommend level it up to level 9 because this with level 9 he would actually then be able to override other people, especially enemies domain expansion. Now I have already made a guide on how does domain expansion in this game work, so I'll probably just link it in the description below so you guys can actually take a look and understand about the whole mechanics of domain expansion. But the main takeaway is that you kind of need level 9 in order to be actually capable of overriding enemies domain expansion. So that's kind of why you still want to level up, even though it doesn't actually affect how much damage you are going to do. Okay, so that's basically his, I guess, key signature move, his domain expansion. Now, having said that, the fact that he kind of do fix damage regardless of what, and therefore he's not a green attacker, you can still play him as a green attacker at end of the day because he is actually going to do some other additional damage, which is based on his own curse technique outside of this HP fixed damage as well. So you can still play him as a traditional green attacker. It's just not the best way of using him. Like if you are actually positioning him as a green attacker, he is just going to be the same as your green SSR UG Todori. There's nothing differentiate him amongst any other green attackers. So that's kind of why I typically do not actually try to position him as a typical green attacker because if that's the case, there tend to be better choices out there. So that's basically going to be my take on how do you actually want to play Mahito. Now, in terms of the other skills that Mahito has, vast majority of the time outside of domain expansion, you just be constantly spamming your skill 2. And that's because when you use your skill 2, you're going to recover your ultimate gauge. And that's going to be very, very important because once again, the main idea behind Mahito is that you want to domain expansion as fast as possible and as often as possible. So increasing your own ultimate gauge, very crucial to how you're going to play Mahito. So this is typically going to be the skill you use all the time. Now, the Shrunk basically is an invasion. It's also very, very useful because what essentially could mean is that if you do have a recollection which is able to taunt, you are able to, essentially do a bit of damage prevention for your entire team. And that is basically one key strategy of the stalling team as well, which I will cover in the second half of the video. Okay. So that's basically his skill 2, which, like I said, is the one you normally want to use outside the domain. And then once you actually use his ultimate attack to have that domain expansion, what you then want to do is use either his skill 3 or use either his skill 1 or skill 2, depending on the situation. Now, the main difference between skill 1, 2, and 3 is the fact that whether the attack is actually going to be disregarding enemy's color. Because if you actually take a look at his skill 1, what you realize is that basically whatever attack you're going to do is going to be based on the weakness, the enemy's color weakness. So it doesn't matter whether the enemy is weak against green or to other color. This is always going to do the most optimal amount of damage. And likewise for skill 2, it also gains that ability once you have domain expansion. However, that's not the case for skill 3. And that basically means is that if you're actually up against an enemy which is weak against green, then yes, sure, you can, once you're actually in domain expansion, you can just spam his skill 3 back to back. And that is fine. You will be able to maximize the amount of damage you do by using that. However, if the enemy is not actually weak against green, especially in the illusory tower, what you tend to actually find is that skill 1 and skill 2 actually do more damage than skill 3 because of the damage reduction in illusory tower is absolutely insane if you're not of the right color. And as a result, you actually want to preferably use skill 1 or skill 2. And even if they actually do the same damage, you have to also bear in mind that Mahito do have a passive ability which is able to for him to self-regenerate his own HP based on when his curse energy is more than 40. So if everything is equal, if skill 1, 2, and 3 do the same amount of damage, then why would you use a skill which eat up more curse energy when you can actually do the same amount of damage with like no curse energy or very little curse energy use, right? So that's basically the situation where you need to decide which one you want to use. And like I said, if the enemy is actually weak against green, then yes, sure, skill 3 is going to be the one doing most amount of damage. If the enemy is not weak against green, then I typically use skill 2 or sometimes even skill 1 if I am really short on curse energy, just to make sure that I can still activate his passive. And now when it comes to team building with Mahito, there's really only one team that I'm going to recommend, which is Mahito Stole team. Now, like I said, you can play Mahito as a traditional green DPS. So for example, you have Kaito plus 2 buffers, and then try to get Mahito's damage output as high as possible. However, like I said, that's not really what Mahito's gonna shine. So that's kind of what I'm not going to recommend that, and instead I'm going to recommend the Stole team instead, which is possibly one of the best teams for free-to-play players because of the fact that all of the characters you need to use are either low rarity or the ones you can get from Phantom Metal Exchange Shop. And same thing with Recollection. Like even though I'm having some SSR Recollection here, some of them you can get obtained for free. Some of them may need gacha, but there are actually alternatives for it as well, which I'll go through all of the options in a bit. Okay, now there are actually 2 variations of the Stole team. You can either play it like this, or you can swap Shoko with Hanami, depending on whether you have also mentioned exchange Hanami from the Phantom Metal Exchange Shop. Now, between the 2 variation of this Mahito Stole team, the Hanami one is definitely going to be the stronger version versus the one with Shoko. And the reason why the Hanami version is stronger is that because you normally want to actually chain combo up the combo ultimate attack from Mahito with the combo attack from Hanami, so the Hanami can actually override Mahito's domain expansion. And the reason why you want to do that is that vast majority of the reason you want to use domain expansion from Mahito is just because this damage which is scaling off enemy HP, and he's able to do this at the very first turn as soon as you release domain expansion, and the actual domain itself is not actually that strong, and as a result, rather than asking Mahito to have 4 turns inside his domain expansion where he can't actually increase his ultimate gauge, so therefore get ready for his next domain expansion. It's actually much faster for you to actually override it with Haname's domain expansion, which have actually very good damage reduction ability. And that's kind of why when you actually compare the two variation of the Hanami versus Shoko in terms of the Mahito Stores team, the Hanami one tend to be the better choice because you are actually able to beat it a lot faster. Now, having said that, sometimes Shoko is actually able to add some additional capability from the fact that she's able to heal. So, for example, sometimes the enemy's damage cannot actually be reduced by damage reduction. For example, it may be like uh damage over time. For example, like the burn attacks from enemy Jogo, they kind of like eat through damage reductions, etc., and they hurt a lot because it kind of like do damage to you every single turn. So trying to survive with just Hanami's damage reduction may not actually be sufficient during those scenarios, and in those cases, Shoko may actually be a better choice than Hanami. But vast majority of the time, like I said, Hanami tend to be better purely because you can basically make the battle a lot shorter. So rather than like 70 turns, you have to wipe out the enemy. Now you may only need like 40 turns or 50 turns, which is a lot more desirable when you are stalling for such a long time, right? So that's basically going to be the variation. Now, in terms of the recollections that you want to put on various different characters, uh, regardless whether you have Shoko or Hanami, vast majority of the time you want to place this one in order to make sure your your ultimate energy goes as fast as possible. And the reason is that for Shoko it's kind of obvious because if your ult is ready, you are then able to do AoE heal, which is definitely very needed every now and then to make sure your team survive. And in the case for Hanami, the reason is because Mahito will be able to start charging up his ultimate attack whilst Hanami is still in domain expansion. So therefore, Mahito will charge up his ult tend to be slightly quicker than what Hanami is able to do normally. However, like I said, you normally actually want to combo up those two attacks together. So if you actually have like an ultimate increase recollection on Hanami, what you're actually then also able to do is make sure that your Hanami's ultimate is ready as soon as possible, so that you can actually then chain them off together. Now, the other very good choice for Hanami is that if you actually have this recollection, which is then AoE healing. So if you actually have this one, this is also a very good choice for Hanami, so that rather than just purely relying on Hanami's damage reduction, you also have a way to AoE heal your entire team. And this can actually heal cursed spirits, such as Mahito and Hanami as well. So that's kind of why this is also going to be a very strong recollection in the store team if you do happen to have it. If you actually play Shoko, then this is a bit less relevant since you are able to heal normally anyway, just with Shoko's own attack, so you don't actually need this. And if you're just playing Shoko, the top choice is definitely going to be this one. Okay, now in terms of the regression on the other two characters, Toge, normally I tend to play something else which can actually self-heal, mainly, especially because if the enemy is doing too much damage and the fact that every single time when Toge do his own damage reduction, it kind of eat up his own HP as well. So having extra bit of healing on him is also going to be very good. Some other alternative choices are sometimes used for Toge is also going to be ones which is able to give damage reduction for the whole team. For example, this SR Recollection, which have a damage taken decrease to your whole team. You can also change this to Sukuna's Vessel if you want. I tend to prefer like a permanent 10% damage reduction rather than something with a cooldown, but that's just my personal choice. Both are very good options. And then the other one I also play every now and then if I really want to annoy the enemy is that I can also play this one, which have the ability to taunt 2 attacks, but more importantly, also have evasion for 2 times. So this can also be very useful if the enemy is doing like high single target damage, as they allow you to basically, try to mitigate those damage completely by invading them. So that's basically the idea here. And likewise for Mahito, the best choice tends to be this one, which once again have the ability to to taunt attack. And this is very, very nice because whenever you will be using his Mahito skill 2, you actually have evasion. So by applying this regression, once again, you can mitigate a lot of the damage that will be coming your way. So that's basically the choices for all of them. Now, as for Kaito, the best choice is basically going to be something which can increase his own curse energy. So the hot pot party from the standard pool is normally going to be the best if you do happen to have it, especially with 3 dupes. Now, if you don't happen to have it, there are other alternatives which are able to increase curse energy when you actually activate them. So those are all really, really good choices as well. Obviously, I guess it's kind of obvious why you want something like that on Kaito, and that's because when Kaito increases curse energy, he can then use his skill 3 more often, and when he uses his skill 3 more often, he essentially then allows your Toge and also Shoko to do more damage reduction and more healing as well. So basically, Kaido is the battery of this team, and that's kind of why it's very important for you to, make sure his curse energy is always as high as possible. Now, in terms of some other tips and tricks I want to also show you guys would be how do you actually want to combo up attacks when you actually play this Mahito stall strategy. So like I said, if you actually play Hanami in the spot instead of Shoko, you always want to combo up Mahito and also Mahito and also Hanami's ultimate attack together, and that's because you can then override Mahito's domain expansion as quickly as possible. And also at the same time, you do want to make sure you combo up Kaito and also Toge's ultimate attack together, and that is because when you actually do this, what's going to happen is that Toge's co-op ability allow you to actually do HP healing to the 2 characters who do the combo attack, and because you wouldn't have Shoko on the team to actually heal up those 2 characters, any extra of healing opportunity is going to be very, very useful, especially when you consider Toge keep on do sacrifice his own HP in order to do his damage reduction. So that's kind of why you tend to actually want to combo up those to make sure they both have a consistent way of healing every now and then. And then the other useful ability when you actually combo up them together is that it's also able to then provide damage reduction from Kaito's point of view. And this, once again, is useful to have damage reduction on Kaito and Toge because Hanami and Mahito both have recovery over time due to their passive. However, that's not the case for Kaito and Toge. So it's very important that you kind of trigger them together so you have both the damage reduction and also the healing from that combo attack. Now, if you actually play Shoko instead of Hanami, the way you want to combo up attack is now going to be different. And the way you actually want to combo up attack is actually now going to be Kaito plus Shoko and then Toge plus Mahito. And the reason is when you actually combo up Kaito with Shoko, what Shoko is able to do is actually increase 20 curse energy for the other partner. And therefore, like I said, the more curse energy Kaito have, the more he's going to be able to actually battery up, power up, and enable the rest of the team. So that's very important why you want to combo them together. And it's also very important why you want to combo Toge and also Mahito together, because once again, Toge is able to heal his partner. And in this case, healing Mahito is actually going to be quite important because Shoko can, heal everyone else with her own healing. However, she can't actually heal a cursed spirit such as Mahito. So when she tries to heal Mahito, nothing will happen, and in fact, Mahito will take a tiny bit of damage as a result as well. So instead, one of the only ways you can actually heal up the HP on Mahito is either going to be through his own passive or through the combo attack with Toge. And that's kind of why when you do actually play this variation of the stall team with Shoko, instead what you want to do is actually you want to combo up Kaito with Shoko and then Toge with Mahito. And in terms of positioning, this is also going to be the positioning you want. You almost always want Toge to happen after Kaito in terms of positioning, and that's because when you actually do a combo attack with Kaito and Shoko, this is going to force Shoko to use her ultimate attack before Toge is able to then actually use his skill 2 to increase the ultimate attack for ultimate gauge for the whole team, and therefore this actually allow you to slightly charge up Shoko's ult a bit quicker, and that's kind of why you almost always want to position it in this order as well.